On Wednesday morning, Aston Villa announced that they have sacked manager Robert De Pauw. In this video, we discuss whether there was sporting merit behind the decision to relieve him of his duties and what Aston Villa need from his replacement. These are our thoughts on whether Robert De Pauw deserved to be sacked. Alright, let's talk about it then. Now, today's video, we're going to be focusing on the sporting side of the decision to sack Robert De Pauw, but I think it would be remiss of us not to discuss some of the allegations against him and some of the complaints. We saw Robert De Pauw sacked on Wednesday morning. This was after a report that he had made an inappropriate comment about a player. I think the fear is, De Pauw has since come out and rejected these claims, refuted these claims, so I don't want to comment either way until there's any sort of evidence. I think it's wrong to say too much, but I think it's worrying for the women's game that this is the third major incident like this that we've seen in this year. We've already seen Skinner have a few. There was an article from Irene Guerrero about his treatment of her. We've had obviously what happened with Willie Kirk and Leicester City earlier this year, and now we've had this. Not a good look for male managers in the women's game, is it?
Yeah, very much so. It's a area of the women's game that has to be eradicated as quickly as possible. It's a real shame just to see incidents like these still happening, and as you say, at the moment it's still the club's word against De Paul's word, and no one really knows what's going on. But overall, even though they're allegations, it's still not good enough. You don't want things to, you don't want these things to be happening, and you don't want these allegations to be true or to even happen in the first place. But it's an area that just shouldn't exist in management. It doesn't matter who the team is, men's or women's football. It's an area of management that should just never. It shouldn't be happening, and it has to be cut out. And it's a big concern that when things seem to go wrong in the women's game, there's male managers out there who seem to do things they shouldn't and do whether no matter what it is, and it has to stop really.
Yeah, and again, it's difficult to talk about because we don't know the nature of the comments, we don't know the legitimacy of the comments. It's very difficult to talk about, but obviously, I think it's we have to talk about it. We have to say it because we'll caveat everything we're going to say that if he has made comments that are inappropriate, then he was rightfully sacked. So yeah. I think it's important to get that in first. And let's talk sporting side of it, though. How Villa were playing on the pitch. Is it a surprise that De Pauw has gone from that perspective?
I think so. To be honest, initially I was caught off guard by it when before anything came out, before as soon as it was announced, I was surprised. I think that when we've watched Aston Villa at times this season, they played some really nice football under Robert De Pauw. You think back to his first game in charge against Chelsea, where they went to Kingsmeadow, they went to the reigning champions under Sonia Bonpastor, and they took the game to them, and they were absolutely brilliant. They went to the Joey Stadium, and they took the game to Manchester City. There's been really good moments for Villa under Robert De Pauw. I think they've played some nice football. They were clearly on a. I know that the results weren't there, but when we're talking about the performances, they played well. And yes, the Villa game was pretty poor, but as I said, they took the game to Chelsea, took the game to Man City, took a point away at Manchester United. There were some really strong results in there for Villa. And yes, they're only a point above the relegation zone, but the performances, for me, were quite positive. The majority of the performances were positive. And as we know with Aston Villa, both in the women's and the men's game, at boardroom level, they're very, very smart people. And I think I was surprised that they saw the performances and they decided to get rid of him.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why I think perhaps there is more weight to the allegations that he made some inappropriate comments, because I think you look at this season so far. I will say though, to play devil's advocate a bit, I thought they were brilliant in the Chelsea game, and then after that it has gone a bit stale. And I think throughout this season they've not attacked with much clinicality or much cutthroatness. So I think that they could be better in that regard, and you could say that that's not great. However, the underlying numbers place them closer to 7th in the league, and we know that the aim at the start of this season from the Villa board was to finish mid-table. 7th, 6th, that sort of area would be perfect. And I think that the underlying numbers suggest they should be there. So from that perspective, in that regard, I don't think it's on De Pauw. But equally, if the players don't want to play for him anymore, then what is the point? And I think player power is a big issue at Aston Villa. You've got a lot of players that are now into their 30s and a lot of players who will arguably have more respect than the manager. And that is, I think, inherently a problem. Because if you've got voice in the dressing room who are bigger than the managers, then what is the point in the manager being there? Because they'll
Yeah.
always be overpowered. So I think that is a bit of an issue. And given how many of those Villa players are a little older, are a little bit more experienced, are less likely to take on board what the manager's saying, I think that is an issue.
Yeah, it does feel to be another similar scenario that we've seen it a few times over the last couple of years, where it is the manager has lost the dressing room, and there are players who just didn't want to play for De Pauw. It simply gets to the point it's not the same situation, but some parallels to Eidevall sacking earlier in the year, where players just didn't want to play for him. Players went out onto that pitch and didn't believe in what the manager wanted them to do. And I think we started to see that at Villa, because as you said, start of the season they had some really good performances and they took on some big sides, but as soon as you started turning them against them, and whatever's happened in the last couple of weeks, players lost the ability to believe in De Pauw, and they refused to go out there and play for him. And I think it's a real concern. It'll be a real point of frustration for Villa, because as much as the points weren't there on the board, we know we so many people talk about how tight the bottom half of the WSL is. 2 wins and Aston Villa could have been in 5th place. That's how tight, or 6th place. Sorry, that's how tight it is. Which is why I think which is why this sacking can't be performance based, because Villa would have known 2 wins, they're in 6th, and suddenly they're having a brilliant season.
Yeah, I think that is a good point. I will say, though, to sort of counteract that, I thought the Arsenal game was particularly poor and a damning performance. So you could also look at it and say, well, they lost 4-0 to Arsenal. This weekend they play West Ham. That's a relegation 6-pointer. And so if it's not working under De Pauw, was this the game to go make a change? Potentially. But then you could also say, well, why not wait till Christmas? Why not play that West Ham game, see where you are, and then reassess over Christmas? Because you'll have 2 weeks of the January window, and of course the winter break for a new manager to come in and assess what they want from the squad and bring in their system. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Obviously, Sean Gota will take the game against West Ham this weekend, which, while that is amusing, a fantastic player in his day, it'll be interesting to see obviously how they get on in that game. I think if West Ham are looking at that now, without there being a new manager in that role, instead it's just the assistant stepping up, I think West Ham will look at that game quite favourably now.
Yeah, I think they will, and they will fancy themselves. I think you do have to give credit to not credit to Aston Villa, but in terms of, I think there will be a lot of positivity for Villa. The result on Wednesday evening against Thursday evening against, or was it Wednesday or Thursday? I can't think. It was Wednesday actually. The Charlton game was really strong. A 4-1 victory there at home is exactly.
I was a little worried when they went 1-0 down.
Yeah, that was a bit concerning, but they did well to recover that. That was a big performance. Big players get on the score sheet, and I think again a little bit similar to Arsenal with the way that Slagers is coming. It's that I think on against West Ham, Villa will play a very similar way to the way they did under De Pauw. It will just be that they will have more belief in who they're being coached by, and if anything, I can definitely see Gota perhaps leaning on those experienced players to guide the team through, and rather than him try and be the voice of the dressing room and him take charge, just as a collective, bring that game home, get 3 points, and then go into the winter break. That's got to be the focus of Villa. There won't be any concern that they won't be thinking ahead. They won't be worrying about who's in charge. It will just be go into this weekend against West Ham, take the 3 points, rally together and win that game. And again, if they win that match, suddenly they're 7th, 8th in the league, and their season looks so much better. So it's definitely not panic stations. I think it's a shame, because I think that definitely in the future there's a lot of potential for Aston Villa and De Pauw to really fly up the table, but that's not going to happen now for Villa. Get through this game against West Ham and then get into the winter break.
Yeah, definitely so. I think as well, obviously, because Villa are now going to be looking at replacements, so I'm sure over the next few weeks we'll start to see some rumour and conjecture on who will take charge. But I think right now it's not a very attractive prospect.
No.
If you look at that squad, it's an amalgamation of a few different managers. You've got a lot of Carla Ward's players there, the older, more experienced players. You've got players that De Paul's brought in who I think now are in a little bit of a weird situation. Take Jill Bailings, I feel if her name is. I may have mispronounced that. Who joined on loan from Bayern Munich this season because she worked with Robert De Pauw last season. She's been injured for the first 5 months of the season, so she hasn't played yet under De Pauw. And now, why does she stay?
Yeah.
That's a big problem. I think the same for Chastity Grant. She's come in because De Paul's there. Now I don't see the motivation for her to stay. And I think Villa are now in a bit of a difficult situation with that. We saw Paula Thomas, someone else who came in this summer, looked really good in that first game against Chelsea. Got suspended a few weeks later against Brighton. Now obviously looked really poor I thought, against Arsenal. So bit of a weird situation recently, but yeah, it's a lot of factors combining to make a Villa side that haven't played particularly well recently. West Ham this weekend, though, is such an important match.
Yeah, Villa will hope to have the same success that Leverkusen have had since they got rid of De Pauw. But I think that it is a weird scenario. You never want to be in a position where you're sacking a manager after 6 months when you've given him a 3-year deal with an option to extend by a year. So technically he had a 4-year contract there, and they had to tear it up after half a year. That's you want to avoid that at all costs. But yeah, Villa have got to look forward. They're going to have to bring in someone who's going to demand authority. Clearly, as we've spoke about, you need a manager who's going to go in there and be a bigger name who is going to have the respect of the players. But that's very hard to come by. I mean, it's hard to think who they will go round, and they will have the whole winter break to think about it. I mean, one who could be a brilliant option, whether she take it, is if Arsenal get a new manager. Could Villa convince Renee Slagers to take a permanent role at Aston Villa?
It's definitely an option, yeah. I think that would be an attractive prospect for Slagers, but equally, I think the Arsenal job at the moment will probably go to Slagers. I mean, I know they were looking at Nick Cushings, but that doesn't seem to be happening. I mean, Cushings has renewed his contract, I think, at NYCFC, so I don't think that's going to happen now, and we haven't really heard anything else about that. Apparently, they've got a shortlist, but they're keeping tight-lipped on who's on that shortlist, so it's difficult to say. And whether they'll keep within England, Villa, or whether they'll look abroad will be interesting. So obviously, De Pauw was someone coming in from abroad. Is there an opportunity here that they go back to Carla Ward?
Potentially.
I mean, Ward obviously took a step out to spend more time with her family. So whether she'd want that or not, I'm not sure. But I wouldn't be surprised if they said, can you come and do it on an interim basis, 6 months, get us into the season? Because the problem is with this Villa squad now is that if Carla Ward comes back, she's someone that I think the squad respect.
Yeah.
She's someone that could come in and do the job for 6 months, keep them in the league. This squad needs an overhaul, and you're not going to be able to do that in January. So I think whoever does come in, it's 6 months of just get points on the board, keep the team in the league, then rebuild in the summer. Yeah,
suddenly it's a real shame for Villa because suddenly it feels like they've wasted another season in terms of they could have made progress this year, but now they're in a position where they have to consolidate, make sure they stay in the WSL and work hard and work hard next season to be where they want to be. But yeah, I think Villa would love to have Carla Ward back. Whether she'd take it, I don't know. But it's going to be hard. It's a manager market that, obviously we had a big summer in terms of managers moving around. Villa have got to make sure they get it right. I don't think Goat is going to take it on a permanent basis. As much as I think he's a great guy, I don't think he's going to be what Aston Villa needs from a permanent manager. But yeah, you never know. Maybe if they beat West Ham 4-0, then give him a permanent job. But yeah.
Is there a chance they tempt someone like Casey Stoney? It's a squad of players that she's worked with. Is that obviously played with? Is that a problem?
I mean, if she's up for the project and up for the task, then definitely so. But I think Villa have got to be eyeing up. Look what Brighton did with Vidicic. Young, exciting manager who's played the game, who understands the game, who has brilliant tactical knowledge, and can come into the league, offer something new, and take the game to every other side in the league. And that's what De Pauw was doing for the majority of it. And that's what will be frustrating from a Villa point of view. But they need to find another manager who can do that.
Yeah, I just think with Stoney, it's someone who the players will respect and who they will listen to. Or you could look at it the other way and say, well, she's played with them, so it makes a bit of a weird dynamic. Depends on how you view that. But I think she'd be an incredible appointment. Whether or not she take the role, though, is another matter, as you say. But yeah, it's a tough one now for Villa. They've got 6 months. I think the priority's just got to be get a manager in who can keep them in the league. Probably someone they know, and then maybe look at, as you say, a more exciting appointment. Go and get a young manager in 6 months' time and rebuild over the summer. But then you've got to get someone who will only do it for 6 months. So it's a bit of a difficult one there. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. This appointment's crucial because I think that the WSL relegation battle is so close this year. And West Ham claimed a big win last weekend, and if they were to beat Villa this weekend, then suddenly West Ham look a bit clear and dry. So they're in a good spot. Everton have got a few points on the board recently. Palace, despite the fact they're bottom, don't look too bad. If Leicester sign any attackers in January, they might start doing well. So Villa have got to be mindful that the relegation battle is so tight this year, and that appointment is so crucial.
Yeah, very much so. It's one of those where it's so tight that Villa have got to be careful. But if they get, to be honest, I think if Villa were to take 3 or 4 wins, go in the next few months, suddenly they're absolutely going to be absolutely fine. Yeah, exactly. Suddenly they're in the top half of the league, and they're probably going to be 12 points ahead. This West Ham game's huge. If they win West Ham, then I think they're in a really nice position and look to be a lot more promising for a manager to come in and set, bolster them. If they lose to West Ham and, teams, I mean, obviously Everton have got a very difficult game this weekend against West Ham, against Manchester City, but there's big games at the bottom. If Palace got United, but you're looking at
This is the chance of Villa to take advantage, because they're these teams do have such tough fixtures. Obviously, Leicester playing Chelsea as well, which is a horrible game. This is the chance then to take advantage of that.
Yeah, very much so.
And Tottenham have got to face Brighton as well. So
yeah, I think they'd take a draw. I think Villa would definitely take a draw away at West Ham, but I think it's away. But yeah, I think that it's important they don't lose. Is the main thing. Maybe Goethe will do an incredible job. And
well, it sounds like there it all falls on the shoulders of Sean Goethe. So can he be the hero? That'll be interesting. That will be interesting to see if they can keep that up. But yeah, big 6 months ahead then for Aston Villa. Obviously, if they do announce a new manager over the next few weeks, we'll probably be talking about that. We'll probably be talking more broadly about the relegation battle soon as well, so look out for that video. But that is everything from us today. If you have enjoyed, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new around here. And join us this weekend for our live coverage of the WSL. On Sunday, we've got a double header for you. Harry's going to be here covering Everton and Manchester City. Then I'll be joining you just after that. I think there's about 10 minutes between the two streams for Arsenal versus Liverpool. So I definitely lucked out on that one, but it's going to be a very good Sunday of WSL action. That is everything, though, from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.